In life's journey, we must seek to reflect, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Road to Rediscovery with your host, Aubrey Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them and to take it to the next level and help others who are struggling through dark times. You know, whether we know it or not, the most challenging, daunting, and disastrous days of our lives shapes and refines us. This is a prerequisite to the transformation of our future selves. With that said, how we respond to these struggles is still critically important. Here's what I mean. You see, we only benefit in this shaping and refining when we respond to the struggle with a mindset for learning and growth. Otherwise, we're mired in the despair and continue repeating bad habits, right? All of this is part of our journey. My special guest knows this firsthand. He grew up in a broken home with dysfunction and domestic issues. He was jailed at 18, bankrupt at 21, and battled addictions. In 2004, he found Christ and has overcome abuse, divorce, and addictions. He's an entrepreneur who helps MMA fighters and other entrepreneurs increase their online presence. He inspires and encourages others by sharing his journey. Guys, I can't wait for you to hear his true heart for service. Let's welcome Erik Allen to the show. Hey, Erik, how are you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Man, Aubrey, I'm so awesome right now. Thank you so much for this honor or for the opportunity to be here, man. It's truly an honor to be here, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you, man. I appreciate time out of your busy schedule to come and chat with us and to open that Erik Allen book and reveal your story for the listeners. I know you'll have some truly insightful anecdotes that will resonate with the listeners, man. So let's just start off with childhood. What was life like in the formative years for Erik Allen growing up?
You know, childhood for me was pretty darn good. I went to Sunday school, went to play Little League. My dad would take my best friend Dave and I and literally throw us in dumpsters behind stores and say, go find treasure. Like that was adventurous for us on Saturday mornings. Like what can we find in the dumpster today, Dad? It's just kind of a fun thing. And then my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old. I'd never heard that word before. Didn't have any friends that got divorced. So it was like all new to me and kind of blew my mind. I was like, whoa, wait a second. You guys are not going to be married? That's weird. And, I spent a lot of time at my grandma's house, who was a huge influence in my life. She's my dad's mom. And she's like 4'11" and just an amazing woman, birthed 6 kids. My grandpa was 6'1", just like an amazing woman, still alive today, 87 years old.
Wow.
As of June of 2021, man, and just still driving, still loving life, man. And so she's such an inspiration for me. So she always just prayed over me, and I spent a lot of time with her. And, when my parents got divorced, my mom got together with a guy who was very physically abusive almost immediately. And it blew my mind that she would stay with this guy. Like, seriously, I think the very first time that he came over, I felt like he was hitting her. And I thought, man, this is so weird that she's not pressing charges. She's staying with this guy.
Right.
I remember there was times when he would come over to the house and they'd be arguing in her room and I'd be outside looking through the bedroom window and he'd be hitting her with a cordless phone. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And police came and my mom never pressed charges. She ended up getting pregnant. And then in the middle of my 8th grade year, they decided to move to small town Montana, Stevensville, Montana, which was population 1,200 people. And they rented this house on 5 acres. It was beautiful, 2 ponds right by the Bitterroot River. The problem was with this house, though, it had 3 bedrooms. So it had one for them, one for my brother, who's just a couple months old, and then one for my sister. And they said, Erik, you live in the garage. So I literally had this plastic tarp at the end of my bed that separated it from the truck that pulled in. Half of the garage had a fireplace that would keep me semi-warm in the winters of Montana when it get to negative degrees, So it was crazy. I liked it because I was playing Nintendo and I was away from the craziness that was happening inside the house. But it really was a chaotic household. And I remember there was this time when I was 13 years old, I was brushing my teeth. They came home arguing, wasn't anything different than any other night. But as I was brushing my teeth, I felt God was saying, man, you got to turn around. You got to take a look at this. And so the way the house was set up was behind me was the kitchen to the pantry to the garage where I stayed.
Right.
And as I turned my head around the corner and I saw him on top of my mom in the pantry right before the garage door, and he was just like, boom, 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 one shot after the other, punch her in the face. I'm like, man, I got to get this guy off.
Yeah.
And so I snuck up behind him. I grabbed a cast iron pan. I got a pretty good baseball swing, and I swung as hard as I could, and I split the back of his head open. And it didn't knock him out. So he turned around and he said, "What then?" As he said that, I took another swing and split his forehead open.
Nice.
And I swung so hard the second time, I actually fell over, and I was on the ground. He was bleeding from his face. He stood up over me and he was yelling. My mom jumps up, lands like 6 punches in a row, blood splatting on the wall. Cops finally show up, take me to jail for the night. My mom doesn't press charges. And then I'm kicked out of the house.
What?
I have 3 months left of my freshman year of high school. And so I'm bouncing around from friends' houses and floors and couches. And that set me off on a path of destruction for the next 10 years of my life, man.
Gotcha. So I'm sure that sparked some anger from your mom not pressing charges. You're getting kicked out and you were protecting her. You were, defending her.
Yeah.
When all this happened. Oh, man. So some of the after effects of that, right? Like hopping from home to home. And did you still continue through your 3 months of your freshman year?
I did. Yeah. I finished my freshman year of high school, and then I moved back to live with my dad in Washington State. And so he rented this house that was by the high school that I would go to, so I could jump on a public transportation bus, get to school.
Right.
And he would put $20 in the cup for lunch money and put Hunger Man meals in the freezer and cereal milk in the house. And then he'd go stay with his girlfriend. So I would see my dad in passing maybe 2 or 3 times a month. So I just basically raised myself and had no accountability, no adult supervision. So I got into drugs pretty early. I was smoking pot before school, at lunch, after school. I was doing acid, mushrooms, hash, whatever I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
And barely getting through school. I graduated with a 2.8 GPA, I think. And my senior year of high school, I actually got arrested for having a bong, which is now legal in the state of Washington, but in 1998, it was not.
Right. And
I had to go to jail. I had a black and white chain gang outfit on, bright orange slippers.
Really?
And literally was still living with a dad, still in high school, wrote my dad a note, "Hey, I'm staying at Danny's house. I'll be back tomorrow." Never told him for like 10 years. I just went to jail, checked myself in, and got out the next day. And, it was crazy. And you would think it would scare me out of doing all that stuff. But what I did was I was on probation for a year, and I could have been drug tested at any point. So I didn't do pot or anything like that for a year, but it enhanced my drinking. So I started drinking really heavily. And 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I woke up to a Post-it note on the bathroom mirror that said, "You can't comply with house rules. You have 48 hours to get out."
From your father?
Yeah.
Wow.
So at that point, I was out again, trying to find a place to stay. And between the ages of 18 and 21, I moved 21 times, living on couches of friends, 3 days here, 4 days there, 2 weeks there, a couple months here. And ended up making a move to Seattle with $100 in my pocket just to get into the music business. I don't know how to play anything, but it was always a dream of mine. I'm like, if I go to Seattle, I'll get there. And so again, I got up there and, bounced around for a while before I found a solid place, a solid roommate and stuff like that. But, living off credit cards that whole time. So basically by the time I'm 21, I was $28,000 in debt and had to file bankruptcy.
Oh my gosh, man. And we'll cover bankruptcy here in a moment, man. But what a journey so far. And I know we've barely scratched the surface, right?
Totally right.
So there's one piece of, there's one thing you described or that you mentioned just a moment ago that to me just rings through and through of irony. I mean, and so it's the element and thought of boundaries. Okay. I find it ironic, and I wonder, I mean, is this something that went through your mind at the time? I found it ironic that, when you lived with your mother and she kind of, lived her life with her boyfriend and, and they did their thing. And then when you moved in with your father, he, give you money, load up the fridge and go off to his girlfriend's. You weren't given any type of boundaries. You weren't told what boundaries were or what they were. But fast forward and you get this letter from your dad saying you've got to leave. You can't comply with the rules. And what are your thoughts on having to deal with the penalty of not following the rules when you have grown up to this point without being given rules or boundaries?
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember my dad one time, I think, asked me if I was on drugs, and I was probably high as a kite. And I was like, nope, not on drugs. Right. That was the one time he ever said anything. But the reason that I got kicked out was probably that had built up and he knew what was going on. My dad never had this like man to man or dad to son type conversation ever.
Okay.
But the last part of my senior year of high school, he was living with his girlfriend and we had moved in with them. And so I had a couple months left in this house that they bought together. And they had me doing dishes. I have no problem doing dishes. I have no problem doing household chores. But I have this thing that I kind of like, I have this gag reflex if there's wet food. Like, I don't know, it's just a weird thing, right? So like I would say, hey, when you guys are doing your dishes, if you have food left over, instead of putting them on the plate and getting all the food wet, can you just scrape it in the garbage and I'll finish them off. I'll put them in the dishwasher, no problem.
Right.
Well, they kept putting food in the sink. And so what I would do is take those plates that had food on it, I would set it to the side and then do the rest and put them back in the sink. And I did that for like 2 or 3 days straight. Yeah. And so it kind of built up. And that's when I woke up to the Post-it note and I was like, well, crap. Guess I'm out, Yeah. And so, it was very strange, man. I think it was properly planned 2 weeks after I graduated high school. You wanted to make sure that I finished high school, but after that, it was, you know what, I'm on my own. Let's figure this out.
Yeah. And what was your mindset at that time? Fear, excitement, concern?
It was kind of like, all right, now I got to make my own money. I got to pay my own bills.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say always, I never could stay at a job long because I just get bored with jobs. So I kind of had this fear like, okay, what am I going to do with my life now? Yeah. I don't want to go to college. I actually tried to go to college for about a year, but I failed out. And because I was working at a hotel, I was working from 4 a.m. to 11, then going across the street to the college. And the first class was U.S. history. And I fell asleep every day through that class. And so I was like, all right, I can't do this, So I tried to make something out of my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I've always been intrigued by entrepreneurship and sales and marketing. In fact, the only 2 classes that I aced in high school were entrepreneurship and sports and entertainment marketing. Oh, and nice. I was able to take all those classes my sophomore through senior year with the same teacher, Mr. Lee. That guy's amazing. But that opened my eyes to, man, you don't need to have this regular 9-to-5 job. You can go and get into entrepreneurship and do things on your own. And so that's where my mindset was like, hey, maybe someday I will be an entrepreneur. I'll try to get some stuff going, but I didn't have drive. I was like, hey, this is the life that was given to me and no one's helping me out. I was like, open my hands, like give me stuff and open up the upper doors. I just felt like, you know what, my life's just going to be like this. I'm going to party it out,
Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha. Now let's talk about the bankruptcy. This, like you said, to get by, you've been using the credit card. Yep. And then of course that incurs debt and you're in and out of jobs. So it's kind of a challenge to continuously pay on that credit card debt. So what was the defining moment where you realized, okay, I have nowhere else to go. I have nowhere else to turn. I have no other alternatives or resources for financial resources. I need to do this by filing and B, turn things around.
I think the big hitting point for me was when I was borrowing money from Money Tree to pay cash advance. And then I'd borrow money from cash advance to pay Money Tree. And then I'd get a little bit out of all of those borrowing monies, right? Like, I'm barely making it by. I had at the time, it was like early 2002, I think, where I had this 1998 Acura Integra. And it was like nicest car I ever owned. It was leather and it was awesome car. And my insurance on that car was 3 times the amount of my car payment.
Wow.
And it's because I got a ticket when I was 18. It was the last ticket that I ever got in my life. But it killed me to be in my early 20s, living in Seattle with this sports car and having that ticket on my record. It was insane. My car insurance was like $400 a month. Wow. It was wild. And I think I was trying to save my car. I'm like, oh, I want to do whatever I can to get this car because it was my first big purchase. Like I loved it. And that thing definitely caused a lot of the issues because I wanted it so bad. And it was like this, well, if I drive this nice car, then maybe people will like me. Right. If I drive this nice car, maybe people will think I'm successful. And I was just drowning in debt. I was drowning in like lack of money. I thought I could go be a full-time entrepreneur for this network marketing company. And, you know, I quit my job and I was like, yeah. And then 3 months later, I was like, well, crap, I don't have any income. I'm barely making $300 a month, you know, it was wild, man.
Oh man. Yeah, that's excuse me, that's a defining time. And then it's hard to not look in the mirror after you borrow from Money Tree to pay the check advance and vice versa, you know? So what'd you do to turn it around?
So I ended up landing this job with Universal Records. One of the odd jobs that I've had, I think I've had like 30 plus jobs in my career just because I always get bored with them. So I'm like, oh, I'll go somewhere else. But I was working at this CD store called FYE when those were around.
I've heard of those.
This guy walked in and he worked for Universal Records. I jokingly said, hey man, how do I get your job? And he's like, oh, you got to send an email to this lady. You got to be an intern with a community college or college, you know, and then you can, if you're an intern and you're enrolled in school, then you can go and, you know, get this internship or you can apply. So I went down to the local community college and I talked to them about this. Hey, I need to be an intern. Do you have an internship class? They said, yep, you do. So it was like $350 to get this internship class.
Yeah.
And I had to go like once or twice a week to this class. So I paid the money, got the receipt, never went to a class, went to Universal and said, look, I'm in college. Here's my receipt. And
are you serious?
Totally. Yeah, totally. I go to Universal. I'm like, hey, look, here's my receipt. I'm actually enrolled in school. And they said, cool, you're in. So I got in as a mailroom guy at the Universal Records office in downtown Seattle. I showed up every day for 6 months, didn't get paid a penny. I was stuffing posters. But here's the thing. I was going to 2 to 3 concerts a week and I had open tab and I was hanging out with rock stars for free. I never had to pay for anything. Right. Priceless. And so I was loving it. And so I was like, whatever it takes. And I was living about an hour drive away from Seattle. So I was driving there every single day just to go there. And I had to park about a mile away because it's downtown. Yeah. And so I did that for a full year. I got laid off my 1-year anniversary. It was during Napster days.
And I remember Napster. Yep.
Napster killed the music industry and half our office got laid off. I was the guy in the bottom of the totem pole. I actually got paid about 6 months in as their mailroom coordinator. So I was tracking sales, setting up meet and greets, doing backstage stuff, really fun. And over this 2-year span, I probably went to about 175 concerts because the year prior to that, I was managing a band and my buddy owned or managed this venue. And so I was just going to concerts all the time. Loved it.
Right.
But it started to wear on me. And so when I got laid off, I went into a pretty heavy depression. I was working at Starbucks at night and I would get off work, go to the grocery store, grab a 6-pack of beer, go to Hollywood Video when those are around and grab my movie and go to my ghetto apartment across the street from where Jimi Hendrix is buried there in Renton, Washington. And I would drink myself to sleep every night. And one night this girl walked into Starbucks and she said, hey, we've got this cool college age event down at our church. Would you be interested in going? And I'm depressed. I'm alone, have no friends. And she's really good looking. Absolutely. What time do I need to be there? Right. That was my mindset. Like, you know what? Let's go. Yeah. And so I went. It was like God planted the seed in that moment. I ended up knowing all these guys at that church that was on the other side of the school, like state. It was like, dude, I haven't seen him since high school, man. I haven't seen him in 6 years. It was this weird kind of connection. Yeah. And I just went down there just to kind of connect with people and try to get some friends. Yeah. And at about a month later, it was Easter 2004. I was managing a band. We went out and played a concert. And I woke up Easter morning in my buddy's basement, surrounded by probably 15 buddies. Okay. And in that moment, I felt God say, man, you're going down this path that's going to end your life very quickly if you don't start making some serious changes in your life. And I decided in that moment to give my life to Christ right there in my buddy's basement. And I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything right there in that moment.
Really?
And I called that girl up and I got her voicemail and I said, hey, happy Easter. Maybe I'll see you at Starbucks sometime. And a month later, we're dating and now we've been married for almost 17 years.
Man, congratulations, man. I mean, what a journey. What a story, you know. God's amazing. I mean, he does this incredible work of putting certain people in front of us at certain times, you know, for a bigger purpose, a larger purpose that we can't even see down the road, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, man, that is fantastic. Oh, what a great story. What a great story. Now, I know you mentioned your grandmother has been, you know, praying over you and everything. So she's had that faith foundation, right? Yep. For as long as you can remember.
Totally. Yeah. She reads and prays over every single grandchild, great-grandchild, and great-great-grandchild every single morning to this day.
What an amazing woman, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
What an
Pretty
amazing
crazy.
woman. I can see why she's so inspirational to you for sure, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as you gave your life to Christ,
Yeah.
um, tell me about some of the things you started to see and observe of yourself, from the time you gave yourself to Christ, um, cold turkey, quit the addiction,
Yep.
cold turkey, cigarettes, drugs, all this stuff, right?
Mhm.
Um, just what were some of the signs that happened in your life from that moment that gave you an indication that, you know what, I'm headed in the right direction now?
And it was, I think initially it was the shocker, like, okay, I've got to change my life.
Yeah,
And I had to have this conversation with my friends that, like, guys, I'm going down this path that's going to end my life real quick. I've got some issues I got to deal with. So I got to take a break from managing the band and going out to bars and stuff like
right,
that.
right.
And the cool thing was they were all like, dude, get sober, get good, get healthy. I'm still
Mhm.
friends with those guys today. I took about 6 months off of just going
Awesome.
out to the bar or anything like that.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and what I did was I started finding people in this church that my now wife went to
Mhm.
that were successful in business, successful in their marriage, successful in their walk with Christ. And I said,
Right,
hey, can I just take you out to coffee? I just want to hear your story. And I was
right.
like, this is before I even thought about interviewing people, but I kind of was interviewing them at the time going, man, what things do I need to do?
Yeah.
And I started soaking up as much as I could. I was reading like crazy, like one book a week of just
Mhm.
how to grow my relationship. And, um, whatever I could do to draw close to God. I was reading the Bible like crazy.
Mhm. Mhm.
And through that, I also kind of battled with shame and embarrassment about my past.
Yeah,
One, because I didn't like to tell people my story.
yeah.
Two, because I definitely, like, I dated a lot of girls and had multiple partners.
Mhm.
My wife didn't. And so that was a big issue for me. And
Mhm.
so that I had to deal with that. And I went to therapy after we got married to just kind of talk it out. I'd never even thought about that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but once I started really surrounding myself with people that were living the life that I wanted to live,
Yeah.
great marriages, great businesses, great faith in their walk, great
Mhm.
walks,
Mhm.
my life changed. I was like, dude, my past does not define my future. I can make a change at any moment. And I can start
Mhm.
right now changing that legacy that was left for me. It's going to be different for my kids. And my wife, she came from a broken home too, not as crazy as mine, but on a
Mhm.
different level of crazy.
Sure,
Right. So
sure.
we both came in having junk that we knew that we didn't want to bring into our marriage, but we also brought in junk that we knew that we had to work through. I came in being defensive because I was always blamed about things when I was a
Yeah,
kid, like, hey, you
yeah.
did this or you did that, right? And she
Right.
came in feeling kind of abandoned, from her childhood.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
had to deal with that. We spent the first 5 years just us. We just wanted to get to know each other before I had
Mhm.
kids. So we
Mhm.
traveled, we went camping, we went down to Mexico twice. We built homes down there. We almost moved
Nice.
down there. Like, we were just like, you know what?
Really?
We want to go do this thing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, yeah. So, I mean, I was just on fire. Like, you know what? I want to make an impact with my life.
Yes.
And I'm 41 now. I didn't share this story that I just said on your show publicly
Mhm.
until I was 39 years old. I just held on to it. And
Really?
man, but once I did, it was such a huge weight off my shoulder, man.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I'm a huge believer of uh, there is uh, there's a sense of strength that
Yeah.
one can get out of being vulnerable, making themselves vulnerable,
Mhm.
in all in the heart and interest of sharing their story to help someone else going through a tough time, man.
Yeah.
So like with you and your wife and your respective upbringings, in abusive homes or just different type of family issues, those were some serious struggles, and you guys have weathered some storms, and that's that shaping and refining, right, that we
Yeah.
talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And you've had that mindset, and I'm sure she does as well, to say, you know what, I'm going to break the cycle.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with people on this, multiple times, Eric, and I've always wondered and been intrigued by the phenomena. I call it a phenomenon
Yeah.
of, um, when you have a child that
Mm.
is in a particular environment and upbringing, and it's abusive, and they become an adult and they have a family. In a lot of cases, that pattern from generation to generation repeats and
Yes.
continues.
Yep.
But then you have some scenarios where the child grew up in that same abusive environment, and when they became older, they decided to be there for their children,
Mm.
to be there and partner and serve with their partner, their spouse.
Yep.
You know, and it's like, well, what causes one to go in one direction versus the other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
Man, I was just thinking, there was this moment where I was in the music business. I was at a concert. I'm in my early 20s, and I saw this rep for another record label there. Now, she was not old in any like way, shape, or form, but she was in her early 30s, and I'm in my early 20s. And I'm thinking, I do not want to be her age, going to concerts 4 to 5 nights a week. I want to have a family. And that was it's the weirdest thing. I can hardly remember anything from when I went to those concerts because I was just obliterated drunk at most of those shows.
Wow.
But I remember that moment so specifically. And I just remember, I think that was the seed that God was kind of planting. And I didn't know him. I didn't have a relationship with him at that time, but I remember he was planting that seed in that moment. And that moment really caused me to go, man, I'm repeating this cycle. You know, I'm repeating this cycle of being around and having broken marriages, broken relationships and stuff like that. I don't want that. You know, I want a better relationship. You know, one of the things I have on my vision wall, because my vision is bigger than a board. I converted a whole wall, right?
Vision wall.
I literally converted a whole wall of my office into a vision. But I have this thing on that says the purpose of pain is to move us into action. It is not to make us suffer. That's man, Tony Robbins said that, and I just took it to heart, man.
Yes. Yeah, you know, there are some people and some phrases that you hear, you know, that just hits you right between the eyes, right? And it's like, you know what? Boom, that says it all. And it becomes your mantra.
Totally.
You know? Yeah. So what got you into MMA, man?
You know, it's a cool thing. My dad was, he was an awesome dad. Like he had some issues, but he had an awesome dad. He was an awesome dad. But he always got Mike Tyson pay-per-views. So we'd watch boxing as a kid. Right. And then he would take me to WWF events as a kid. So I saw Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and British Bulldog and all those guys. And he would take me to regional wrestling events where I got to see Jake the Snake as he was rolling up in the regional scene, and Dusty Rhodes, he was rolling up in the regional scene.
Mr. Wonderful and all those guys.
All those guys. And so my dad took me to those. And so I was always intrigued by wrestling and combat sports and stuff like that. My dad would rent ninja movies that had no English, and he would just put them in the VHS back then, right? And it was like we didn't know what they were saying, but it was just all ninja fights, and I was like enthralled by, oh my gosh, I think I was a ninja for Halloween for like 15 years straight. You know, like I just really, I mean, I was like, every year I'm going to be a ninja, like, you know, and I, you know, so I always got into it. And then I think, you know, I was living with, funny enough, I actually lived with a wrestler right before I filed bankruptcy, or while I filed bankruptcy, but his name was Mr. Sexy. He was a regional wrestler out in the Seattle area. And it was funny because we had a ring in the backyard, and I mean, guys would come over. Oh, it was crazy. I mean, they have Royal Rumble practice in the backyard. Unbelievable, you know. And so I just have always been around it. And then in 2012, I'm sitting around the house and with my wife, and I'm going, man, I really want to be involved in MMA. I'm not a fighter, but I want to kind of see if we can make something out of it. And so she came up with the name Top Rated MMA. And we said, how can we make it different? This is the time of when Tap Out was real big. So we said, we're going to be 100% American made, and we want to partner with a company that helps out veterans. And so Brian Stan used to be in the UFC. He started an organization called Hire Heroes USA, where they help train veterans and their families for free, and job placement for free on how to do jobs and interviews and all that stuff. And so I reached out to them, and it just started too. I said, hey, we'd love to partner with you guys, give you a percentage of our sales. And so we still to this day donate 25% of all the affiliate marketing profits that we make to that organization. And so we made a lot of business mistakes. We bought a bunch of inventory that didn't sell. It took off really fast, and then it dropped really fast. And so we ended up donating like, I think 75 or 80 shirts to Hurricane Katrina victims. Like we were just trying to get rid of the inventory. And in 2015, I actually put an ad in Craigslist. I said, who wants to buy this company? You know, here's the brand, here's the followers, all this stuff. One guy called me, offered me like $2-3 grand for it. And in that call, I like made a conscious decision, or a subconscious decision, to say, I'm not ready to quit yet. And so I declined the buy. And what I did was I spent the next year and a half just really kind of ho-humming the business, not really doing much with it. And in 2017, I decided I want to have a podcast. So I just wanted to ask fighters, why do you want to get in a cage and get punched in the face? I had no idea what I was doing. Bad lighting, bad camera. You know, like I was in a walk-in closet for almost my first 100 episodes. You know, I didn't even have a beard. Like, I mean, just like, it was brutal, you know? So I just was like, I want to understand. And so, you know, some guys are like, hey, I grew up doing, you know, karate, or I did wrestling, and it transcended MMA to guys who are like, dude, I have federal offense and I can't get a real job, but I can go fight someone and put food on my table.
Yeah.
And so I'm so fascinated with those stories. So that's the long version of your answer there, of your question there, how I got into MMA, but that's where I'm at, man.
Well, that's fascinating. I truly, truly mean that, man. And I also want to thank you for partnering with the Heroes business as well.
Yeah.
The work that you guys are doing, from what you described to me a moment ago, and in your proceeds, 25%, you said
25% of all of our affiliate links that go to those guys. Yeah.
Goes to that. And I've never served, but I'm a military brat, and both my parents served, and
wow, that's awesome.
I was born on Fort, and then my siblings were too. So it hits home for me.
Yeah.
And so I want to thank you for having that heart for helping veterans and everything, man. So that's huge. Now, I am a huge boxing fan. I mean, I'm not so much in the MMA. I have some buddies of mine who are, and they invite me over for some pay-per-views and vice versa when I have them for boxing. Excuse me. And I never, I played around and sparred a little bit, but nothing really big. And but I wanted to be in the space. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Just somewhere in the space. And so I live in North Texas now, but for about 6 years. But back in I'm from Cincinnati, and back in, I guess, 2012, 2011, thereabouts, I decided to apply for my judge's license. And
nice.
So for the state of Ohio, through the athletic commission, I got my judge's license, and I've judged some pretty good fights. Aaron Pryor Jr., his son, and then Adrian Broner when he was making his debut, So, and of course those are Ohio fighters and stuff, right? But so it was small time, but just to be in that space, right, in a combat sport, and asking those questions and getting, the firsthand responses from these fighters, just like you are, man. To me, that was fascinating. I never had that, but with what I knew about boxing, I wrote a short story called The Ballad of the Boxer.
Okay.
And it talks about how it's a sport way different, and I would imagine MMA is the same. Way different from your traditional football, basketball, baseball, right? I mean, coming from college to the pro ranks and stuff. And when you declare yourself pro, it's not like there's no huge signing bonus or anything. You're not drafted. Okay. So you're working construction, and you're going to the gym, and you're jogging. And if you have a family, you're at home, and it takes a commitment, Yeah. And for peanuts too. So
totally.
Yeah. So just the whole combat sport of will against will, in the ring or the octagon, either way you look at it, man, is to me it's fascinating. So I'm sure you've had some pretty good fighters on the show, right?
I've been blessed to speak to some pretty cool people, man. I've had Ken Shamrock on twice.
Nice.
And, I had Chris Lieben on the show, and a couple of the guys who are on the Ultimate Fighter House currently right now have both been on my show. That both guys from Spokane up here, Josh Radenhouse and Brady Heidstand, who's going to be fighting in the finale here soon. But I've been blessed to speak to a lot of guys on the show, and I think episode 239 or 240 drops this weekend. So, been blessed to be able to continue to do that. Humbly considered the #1 MMA podcast out here in the Northwest where I'm at. And I release my shows every Saturday, and I'm just really passionate about talking with these up and coming fighters and early pro fighters. I want to help them get their name in out there. And so I talk with fighters all over the world. I kind of set a personal goal to talk to a male and female fighter from every state in the US, and I'm just about there. So we're going, and I created a pin map when I started. So it was pretty colorful with all the pins, but it's just a fun goal I set for myself. I had a quick question for you though. Being a boxing fan, what is your take on bare knuckle boxing back?
You mean from old school back in the day?
Well, like bare
or the backyard stuff.
Well, like right now, like there's this huge upkick in popularity for bare knuckle boxing, like bare knuckle boxing fighting championships. And,
even today, I mean, I knew back in like 2010, 2011, when Kimbo Slice started to like make his emergence, I guess he was out of Florida where they had YouTube videos of backyard brawls and stuff. I mean, is it of that nature or?
I mean, it's
really?
Well, no, it's actually in a ring. And and they're making way more money than the UFC. So a lot of the MMA guys are transitioning MMA and they're going to bare knuckle boxing.
Oh my gosh.
And they're, like Paige Van Zandt, who is a UFC fighter. She was making 40, 50 grand, maybe a fight for UFC. She goes to make her debut in bare knuckle boxing. She wins like 500K. Like, I mean, it's like, there's so much money and it's a huge popularity. A lot like Chris Lieben went to bare knuckle. Ken Shamrock's got his own bare knuckle promotion called Ballad bare knuckle. Wow. And he took it to a whole nother level, like where currently like bare knuckle fighting, they've got their own ring and they do bare boxing. But Ken Shamrock, he went to his promotion. They do a pit, an old school pit, no rings. It's got the ramp and the guys wear the old like 1920s, like, pants, boxing
throwbacks.
Throwbacks. Yeah. I mean, and they get in there and, and it's so cool to watch. And I'm kind of like, I would never want to get in there. It's fun to watch.
Right.
But I like seeing these guys, get in there and actually make some money where they were putting their body through so much in the UFC and barely making anything. Now they're able to go and make some good money. Interesting.
And that's one thing I can also appreciate when it comes to pugilism, I guess, or just combat sports, right? It's not so linear or one-dimensional like it has been, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago, right?
Totally.
There's different, there's mixed martial arts, there's boxing, there's kickboxing, there's and now with the bare knuckle, it's just there's different avenues that fighters can explore.
Yeah, totally.
They have the passion for it, just like boxers have told me. That first time you get hit in the ring, you'll know whether or not the sport is for you or not for you, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, man. So no, I'm gonna have to maybe Google that, man, and look that up as far as just this. Is it a sanction? Is it a circuit?
Or BKFC is the organization, and they're just the UFC of bare knuckle boxing. Gotcha. And they're in a ring, and it's basically toe the line. And so these guys are up there in bare knuckles, and I would say the majority of fights don't go to the don't go to decision, right? I mean, somebody's getting knocked out pretty quick. But it's fun to watch, man. Having Ken Shamrock on the show, I talked to him about, hey, what's your take on it? Obviously you have this promotion. And he was saying, well, look, here's the deal. It's 4-ounce gloves in MMA, way more dangerous than bare knuckle, because you can take 150, 200 shots in the head with MMA 4-ounce gloves. Yeah. But if you go into bare knuckle, you might take 10 or 5 before you get knocked out, and it's all over. You're not taking as many hits to the head. So his concept is like, bare knuckle boxing is the safest sport out there.
Interesting.
A lot of blood because you bleed more. But he said in regards to headshots, you're taking way less headshots than anything else.
Amazing. What a perspective. Yeah. I never thought of that, man. Never thought of that. So let me ask you regarding the great work that you're doing in helping MMAs get more exposure and everything. Have you, and I know you're not a coach, like a life coach or anything like that, right? But you've shared your story with some of these fighters, right? And I'm sure they can relate in their journey to some degree.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fighters where I've had on my show. The first question that I ask every fighter and every entrepreneur that's on my 2 shows is, tell me about your childhood and where did you grow up?
Yeah.
One, because I'm curious what that was like and where they're at today. I want my listeners to understand these are just real people that decided that whether they had a great childhood or they had an abusive childhood, they had a goal in mind and they took action to get there. They wanted to be a fighter. They wanted to be an entrepreneur. They got through the yuck. They got through the failure.
Yes.
And so I think there is a lot of times when I can relate to those fighters that had that abusive childhood. And I've had guys come on there and say, man, my life sucked. I got abused. I got raped. I got, this and that, crazy. And I love to share my story with them and go, man, look at what you're doing today though. Like you got out of that. That's I'm proud of you, man. That's awesome. And so I love that concept of both my shows right off the bat. I want to know, like, hey, what was childhood like for you?
Right.
And it's such a great conversation for me. And my opinion is like right off the bat, we're getting deep. Like I don't want to fluff around. I want to get right to it. My shows are short. Like I get in and I get out, but I want them to get this message across that, hey, you know what? Everybody fails. Our past doesn't define our future. We can make a change at any point. And it's so cool to hear the stories. And, a lot of people are like, hey man, thank you for sharing your story to me, when I have them on the show.
Yeah.
And so it's just cool to connect with those guys, man.
Oh man, that's fantastic. That's awesome. So, Erik, what have you learned about yourself um, when you think back today? Different seasons in your life, right? There's
Yeah.
the season of the abuse and witnessing the abuse, with your mother, and then living with your father, and then hopping from house to house, and then the drugs, and then living on your own in Washington. What through each of those phases, and now, if you look in retrospect, what is the one key thing about yourself that you've learned in that journey?
I'm a fighter. I'm going to keep going for fighting for
Yeah,
what I want. And
yeah,
I'm not ready to quit,
yeah, yeah,
and whatever gets thrown at me, I'll fight my way through it, especially now being married, have my kids, and
yes,
whatever it takes to protect them.
yes,
I'm willing to do it. And I also had to change my mindset. One
yeah,
of the things that I had to really put through is I had to be a quitter. And what I mean by that is I had to quit thinking I didn't deserve success. I had to quit
hmm,
thinking that I didn't deserve a great marriage, or
hmm,
I had to quit thinking I didn't deserve money, or
hmm,
quit thinking that I wasn't making an impact. And I had to quit quitting
yeah,
because I kept starting all these things and going, I'm going to be a millionaire, or I'm
yeah,
going to do this. Right. And then
yeah,
I'd quit.
yeah,
Right. And when
yeah,
it got hard, I quit. And so I had to quit being a quitter. I had to be
hmm,
a quitter to get through that stuff, man.
yeah,
And so once I realized that my mindset was the only thing that was holding me back,
right.
like, man, the sky's the limit. Now we can make some impact on the lives around the world.
Oh, 100%, 100% for sure, man. Oh, yeah, you are a fighter, and I'm sure there's some parallels or some metaphors, I guess, in MMA fighting, uh, alongside the journey you've had of fighting, right?
Yeah.
Fighting to define who you are
Mhm.
and to find your place and your purpose. So, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your journey, sharing the lessons that you've learned. And if you don't mind me saying, Erik, one other thing about yourself that I've learned from you in what you've been sharing with the audience here, with and myself, is you're not defined by your past,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And you have the power to turn things around.
Yes.
And so you really drove that point home. I know that resonated with the listeners, as well as the fact that you're a fighter. And I just got to thank you for that, man. I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing those insights.
Oh man, it's such an honor to be here. You're a great host. I'm very professional, man. If people aren't listening to your show, they need to be listening to your show. They need to be subscribing to your show, man. Seriously, you're amazing, amazing host, man. Seriously, it was good stuff, man.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. I mean, so kind, so thoughtful. And I'm going to subscribe to your podcast because
Awesome.
I do want to hear the feedback and the thoughts of these fighters.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been intrigued with, what type of mindset do they need to put themselves in 24 hours before a fight, right?
Yeah.
Or
That's my
an
big
hour
thing.
before the fight, or while they're in the dressing rooms, right? I mean, just
Totally.
all of the stuff leading up. I don't care if you've been doing it for one day or for 10 years,
Mhm.
what is that mindset, So, and I'm sure I can pick that up with just about any of your almost 300 episodes, man. So I'm going to subscribe today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, Erik, we're going to now go to a segment I like to call Three for the Road.
Okay.
And in Three for the Road, that's where I will ask you three random yet thought provoking questions that I will challenge you to answer in 5 words or less. So, what do you say? You think you're up for it?
Let's go, man. I'm gonna keep track of my fingers.
All right.
I'm
Fantastic. uh, Here we go. And hey, man, check this out. By the way, uh, these questions are not cookie cutter. I don't ask the same Three for the Road questions to every guest. Okay.
Awesome.
These are custom questions for my guests based on their background, their expertise, and their journey. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Here we
Okay.
go. Here we go. Question number one for Three for the Road. And in this, I'm going to ask you one of the life struggles that you've had that you shared with us. I'm gonna name that struggle, and if you or that challenge, that barrier, and if you can equate that struggle to with an MMA strike or a move based on the pain and the after effect, what would that strike or move be? Here's the struggle.
Okay.
Incarceration.
Man. A rear naked choke. and I say that as because my life at that point was such a loss. It was just, I don't remember any of that. I was so high most of the time.
Yeah.
And so the rear naked choke, when you get choked out, the lights go out, right? I had no idea what I was doing. Like the cops came to arrest us at a campsite. So they came from behind me and I just remember this moment where I had to go to jail. And so I think that's the move. I think like came from behind and I was out, and so that's why I relate to that. It's funny because when I was at 23 years old, I actually called up the courthouse and I said, hey, here's a funny question. I got arrested from you guys in your court. I went to jail there, but I've never seen my mugshot. Can you send it to me? And they laughed and they said, sure. And they mailed me a copy of my mugshot. And it is the scariest thing I've ever seen. I look so scared, 145 pounds, holding up my number in my black and white chain gang outfit. It was pretty funny. Seriously.
Totally, dude. Yeah, I can see why they'd laugh. You're asking for your mugshot. It's like, man, most guys are like, you know what? I'm never looking back,
Totally.
But, yeah. Oh, I love it. So rear naked choke.
Yeah. So I think I got that in 3 words?
Okay. Yeah, that's 3. Yeah, with 2 to spare, man. You're doing great, Eric. All right. Yeah, you're doing great. All right. Number 2. If addiction was a physical person that you were facing in the octagon, what would it look like?
Man, I think addiction if they were a person and a fighter in the cage, man, it's funny. I would say Conor McGregor.
Conor McGregor. Okay.
I'm not a fan of his, but he's everywhere.
Yeah,
he is so hard to get out of your mind. Whether you love him or hate him, he's always there. And he has these mood swings where you'll see him on Twitter and he'll throw some really harsh comments out and they'll delete him. Tweet and delete, tweet and delete, tweet and delete. And I think that's how drug addiction is, right? Like you're into addiction. You're like, yep, I'm going to quit. Nope, I'm going to quit. Yep, I'm going to quit. Back and forth. And so I think that's the one guy that if I had to say addiction was a person in the cage, it would be Conor McGregor. And I'm not a fan of his, but I think that would be the guy.
Okay. No, I understand. And thank you for clarifying, why, right? I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I asked you that question, I was waiting for some 6'8", 320 pound,
not an actual person, just a description. Okay.
No, but no, you gave me a name. I mean, and thank you for that, because that just wraps it all up. When you get a name and the person or of them, then the size, the weight, the skill, the build and all that. But it's the intangible stuff that you talked about that you use to relate it to addiction. Right. The on again, off again, tweet, delete. I mean, that drives it home as to why it's Conor McGregor for you. So I appreciate you sharing that, man. That's some serious insight. So thank you for that.
Yeah, dude. No problem.
Yeah. All right. And number 3 to top us off for 3 for the road.
Okay.
Share with us your celebration dance or your victory song that you would do after overcoming all that you have.
It goes back to the song that I got married to when they announced my wife and I as married couple, and it's MXPX, First Day of the Rest of Our Lives.
The rest of our lives.
And it's a punk rock song. And so here we are at this church. They announced us, everyone, grandma, grandpa's, everyone in the crowd thinking we're going to play some piano music. They said, Mr. and Mrs. Erik Allen. And then it just kicks right into a guitar riff and just punk rock. And for me, that was the one song that says, hey, this is the first day of the rest of our lives right now. Like we are starting over. And to this day, that's my wife and I's favorite song. And we love that song. And when it comes on, that's just our song. And just the lyrics talk about going through the ups and the downs. And but today's today. It's the first day of the rest of our lives. Let's go.
Really nice. I tell you, it's the moment and the music together. Yeah. And that is just it's just emblazoned in your hearts and your minds. for years to come, man. That's beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing that with me, Erik.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that wraps us up for 3 for the Road, man. You did it.
Come on. Awesome. Awesome, man.
You did it for sure, man.
So
All right.
good.
So, Erik, how can the listeners learn more about you and subscribe to your podcast and maybe look into some of the cool stuff that you offer?
Man, I appreciate that. So I'm on every format out there for my show. So audio goes to, Apple, Spotify, all those audio formats. And then I release a video format. So Facebook, IGTV, YouTube channel. And I'm big on Instagram. So I love connect with people on Instagram. It's just Erik, Erik G Allen is my account. And I respond to every comment and every DM. So if you have questions for me, you can shoot me a comment or shoot me a message. You can respond to it, something on my post there, but you can find out everything about me. My testimony is on there, my story, what I do for my shows. I release my blurbs, my YouTube channel. I do voiceover work. So I've got stuff on there. I do brand videos for brands. So they send me their products. I do brand, reviews, box opening, stuff like that. And so I love doing that stuff. And so, yeah, people can, subscribe to my channels, connect with me, shoot me a DM if you're interested in having me speak, doing voiceover work. And so that's the best spot to connect is on Instagram.
Fantastic. Oh, fantastic, man. We will have links to your podcast and links to your social mediums so people can follow you, direct links in the episode show notes for sure. And I'm going to make sure that I follow you on Instagram as well, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. For sure. Erik, again, man, thanks for coming on the show. And look, seriously, I want us to keep in touch, man. I'd love to have you come back in the next 6 to 8 months or so and give the listeners an update and what's going on in your world. Would that be cool?
Man, absolutely. Absolutely. Been an honor, dude. And I set a goal in January of this year that I wanted to be a guest on 100 podcasts.
Wow.
And man, I just want to say thank you for being part of that. And I'm one of those guests that will definitely share this out. And at the end of 100, I'm going to list all of them on my website. I'll do backlinks to everybody's shows. And I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on and be part of that.
Oh, so kind, man. No, you're very welcome, my man. You're very welcome, brother. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey, your 100 podcast guest journey.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. I really, really appreciate it. And also, I want to let you know that just released a couple months ago, the Rediscover Roadmap digital course is now available. This course shows you how to take an introspective approach to your personal development and accountability by using the 4 pillars of personal growth: self-awareness, humility, gratitude, and service for others. It's an awesome course. And if you want a free preview and register, just visit roadtorediscovery.com/course. That's road, the number 2, rediscovery.com/course. The Road to Rediscovery, it's part of a movement, part of a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the journey with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon.
The Road to Rediscovery is an AJ Shark production.